Hey everybody, welcome back aboard Profiles from the Titanic on the Horizon's Edge channel. And this time as we take a look at people and families especially, we've profiled the Goodwin family, for example. All 8 of them died in the sinking. But in a lot of the situations, I would argue the majority of all the people on board the Titanic, if they were together or were traveling with their family, most of those families were split apart, were torn apart, where 1 or 2 of the members perished in the tragedy, and the rest of them had to go on. They survived, especially the women and the children. And today in the profile, we have that similar kind of tragic story where a small family of the husband, the wife, and a young child were traveling, coming over to Canada in this case, and they lose their father. And the mother and the child have to go on, and it's such a tragic story. But actually today, in the profile, the young child actually becomes one of the more famous survivors that we know in the tragic story. We're talking today in the profile Benjamin Hart and the Hart family, his wife Esther, and then his 7-year-old daughter, Little Eva, who, if the name sounds familiar, you can look her up on YouTube, just type in her name and you'll find a lot of interviews with her. And she became, in the later years, one of the more visible and recognizable Titanic survivors, and one of the last ones who actually remembered things that went on. Since she was 7 years old, she kind of knew at least what was going on. I could talk about it up until her death. So anyway, hit the subscribe and the like button. And today in the profile from the Titanic, Benjamin Hart and his family. Hope you enjoy it. Benjamin Hart was born in England in 1864. Eventually, he married a woman named Esther, and together they had a daughter named Eva. Benjamin was a builder by trade, but his business had hit hard times by 1912. He had received word from a man in Winnipeg, Manitoba, that he could come and start a new life and job in North America, and Benjamin was all the ready to make the trip. His wife Esther did not want to go right from the beginning. She would be leaving friends and her elderly parents, but she dutifully went with her husband. They booked second-class passage on the new RMS Titanic. Esther refused to get undressed at night during the trip and instead slept during the day. She was terribly afraid that something might happen on the trip. At times, Benjamin was very upset with her. He, on the other hand, was having a great time on board the luxurious liner. On Sunday night, April 14th, Benjamin turned in early, and Esther was sitting up in their cabin when, at 11:40 p.m., she heard the most awful scraping and tearing sound, as she described it. She woke Benjamin up, and he was exasperated at her again, but he got up and went to check what was wrong. They were told it was just a precaution, that they were going to have lifeboat drills, but Esther knew they didn't conduct lifeboat drills at midnight. The family eventually got dressed and went up to the boat deck. People were shouting that women and children were to be loaded onto the lifeboats. Esther Hart recounted that after trying 4 lifeboats, they finally found room in boat number 14. This was the boat that 5th Officer Lowe was loading. Esther and Eva were thrown into the boat, and that was the last they saw of Benjamin. He was not allowed in the lifeboat with them. No farewell kiss, no parting words. Esther and Eva eventually were rescued by the Carpathia in the morning, and shortly afterward returned to England on board the Celtic. Benjamin's body was never found. Esther would tell her story, and much of what we know about the sinking, at least from her point of view, comes from her eyewitness account. Esther lived until 1928, dying at the age of 65. Little Eva would go on to become one of the most recognizable and famous of the Titanic survivors, especially in her later years in the 1980s and 90s. She published an autobiography in 1994 and would give a variety of interviews about the Titanic, some of which are available on YouTube. She died at age 91 in 1996. At the time, there were only 8 living survivors still alive. Thanks for watching Profiles from the Titanic.